The rope hung from the old oak tree at the edge of town, swaying in the bitter November wind like a noose waiting for its condemned. And 17-year-old Sarah Owens knew it was meant for her reputation, not her neck. She stood in the doorway of her father's church in Reno, Nevada, watching the gathering crowd with eyes that had cried themselves dry 3 days ago. The year was 1876, and in this dusty frontier town perched on the edge of the Truckee River, a woman's virtue was her only currency worth counting. Sarah had spent it all on a lie, or rather, a lie had spent it for her. You need to stay inside. Her father's voice came from behind her, hollow and broken. Reverend Thomas Owens had aged 10 years in 3 days. His congregation, once so faithful, had turned on him the moment his daughter's supposed sin came to light. "Sarah, please, do not give them more reason to talk." She turned to face him, this man who had raised her alone after her mother died, bringing her into the world. His face was gray, his hands trembling as they clutched his worn Bible. "Father, I have told you the truth. Why will no one believe me?" "The truth," his voice cracked. "Marcus Dalton is the mayor's son. His word against yours is no contest at all. But it is a lie. I never lay with him. I have never lay with any man. He is angry because I refused his advances, so he has destroyed me instead." Her voice remained steady despite the fury burning in her chest. "And you believe him over your own daughter?" Thomas Owens looked at his child, really looked at her, and something crumbled behind his eyes. "I want to believe you. God knows I want to, but the evidence—" "There is no evidence because nothing happened." Sarah's composure finally broke. "He told everyone I am carrying his child to force my hand in marriage. I am not with child. I have never even kissed him. But the town has already judged me, and you—" She choked on the words. "You did not stand up for me, not once, not in front of them." The Reverend's silence was answer enough. Sarah grabbed her mother's old shawl from the hook by the door and wrapped it around her shoulders. The cream-colored wool was worn thin in places, but it was the only thing she had left of the woman who had died to give her life. Some legacy that had turned out to be. "Where are you going?" Her father's voice held a note of panic now. "Away from here. I will not marry Marcus Dalton. I will not live in this town that has condemned me without trial, and I cannot stay in a house where my own father questions my honor." She paused at the threshold. "You taught me that God sees the truth in all things. I will have to trust that is enough because clearly, earthly fathers are not so discerning." She stepped out into the cold November afternoon, and the crowd near the oak tree fell silent. There must have been 30 people gathered there, maybe more. Women in their proper bonnets and shawls, men in their Sunday suits despite it being Thursday. They had come to see the fallen woman, the preacher's daughter who had lain with the mayor's son out of wedlock. Sarah held her head high as she walked past them. Someone spat on the ground near her feet. Someone else called her a whore. She did not flinch, did not react, just kept walking down the main street of Reno toward the edge of town, where the desert began its slow reclamation of all things human. She had no plan, no destination, only the burning need to be anywhere but here. The November sun was already sinking toward the Sierra Nevada mountains to the west, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if her heart was not breaking. "Miss Owens." The voice was unfamiliar, low and smooth as aged whiskey. Sarah turned to find a man standing beside a paint horse, watching her with eyes the color of summer grass. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dusty trail clothes and a worn leather vest. A cowboy, clearly, from the look of his gear, and the way he stood with the easy confidence of a man who lived in the saddle. He could not have been much older than her, maybe 22 or 23, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the edges beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "I do not believe we have met," Sarah said carefully. After the past 3 days, she trusted no one in this town. "We have not. Name is Wyatt Yates. I rode in this morning with a cattle drive, heard about your situation." He gestured toward the center of town where the crowd had begun to disperse, their entertainment having walked away. "Heard what they are saying about you." "Then you should know better than to speak to me. I am ruined, according to everyone who matters." The bitterness in her voice was thick enough to taste. Wyatt Yates studied her for a long moment, those green eyes seeing more than she was comfortable with. "You know what I think. I think Marcus Dalton is a liar and a coward. I heard him bragging in the saloon last night about how he was going to force your hand, make you marry him whether you wanted to or not. Said if he claimed you were carrying his child, your father would have no choice but to agree to the match." Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "You heard him say this, clear as day. He was drunk, boasting to his friends about how clever he was. Apparently, you turned him down 3 times and his pride could not take it." Wyatt's expression hardened. "I have no tolerance for men who hurt women to soothe their own egos. Why are you telling me this?" Hope was a dangerous thing, but it flickered to life in her chest anyway. "Because I am about to make you an offer, and I want you to know I am making it with full knowledge that you are innocent." He took a step closer, his voice dropping so that only she could hear. "Marry me, tonight. Before sunrise tomorrow you will be my wife and Marcus Dalton will have no claim on you whatsoever." Sarah stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You want to marry me? You do not even know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave enough to walk through that crowd with your head high. I know you are honest because a liar would have married Dalton rather than face this shame. I know you deserve better than what this town has given you." He paused. "And I know I need a wife." "You need a wife?" Sarah repeated the words, trying to make sense of them. "Why? I have a ranch up in the mountains about 40 miles north of here. Good land, plenty of water, but it is lonely work building a place alone. I came to Reno to sell cattle and find a wife, though I expected to do more courting before proposing." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "But when I heard what was happening to you, it seemed like maybe we could help each other. You are proposing a marriage of convenience." Sarah understood now. "You get a wife, I get escape from Marcus Dalton and this town. That is how it would start, yes, but I want you to know I would never force you to anything. You would have your own room, your own space. We would be partners in building the ranch, nothing more until and unless you wanted otherwise." His eyes were sincere, honest in a way that made her heart ache. When was the last time someone had looked at her with anything other than judgment or lust? "You are offering me freedom." The words came out as barely more than a whisper. "I am offering you a chance. What you make of it is up to you." Sarah turned to look back at the church where her father still stood in the doorway, a broken silhouette against the fading light. She thought of her mother, who had loved the Reverend so much she had been willing to die to give him a child. She thought of the town that had condemned her without evidence, the friends who had turned their backs, the future that had been stolen from her by a man's wounded pride. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "when would we marry? Tonight. There is a circuit judge staying at the hotel. I already spoke to him. He will perform the ceremony in his room. By morning you will be Sarah Yates and this town will have no power over you anymore. My father will never approve. You are 17, nearly 18 based on what I heard, old enough to make your own choice." Wyatt's voice was gentle but firm. "And forgive me for saying so, but your father lost the right to approve or disapprove when he did not defend you." The truth of those words cut deep, but Sarah could not deny them. She looked at this stranger who was offering her salvation with no guarantee of anything in return. It was madness, It was impulsive. It was possibly the most foolish thing she could do. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I will marry you." Something shifted in Wyatt's expression, a relief so profound it told her this had been no casual offer. He had been genuinely worried she would refuse. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I promise you will not regret this. We shall see." Sarah tried for a smile and almost managed it. "What do I need to do?" "Come with me to the hotel. The judge is expecting us at 6 o'clock. That gives us about an hour to get you ready." He offered his arm, a gesture so courtly it seemed out of place on this dusty street. "Do you have anything you need from your father's house?" Sarah thought of her few possessions, her mother's Bible and pearl hairbrush, the 2 dresses she owned beyond the simple brown one she was wearing. "I do, but I do not want to face him again." "Then tell me what you need and where to find it. I will get it for you." "You would do that? Sarah, in about 2 hours you are going to be my wife. That means your problems become my problems and I take care of what is mine." There was no possessiveness in his tone, only a matter-of-fact certainty that made her feel safe for the first time in days. She described her room, the small space under the eaves where she had slept her whole life, and where her meager belongings were kept. Wyatt nodded, his expression serious and headed toward the church. Sarah watched him go, this stranger who was about to become her husband, and wondered if she was dreaming. The hotel was the finest building in Reno, which was not saying much. 2 stories of whitewashed wood with a covered porch and actual glass windows. Sarah had been inside only twice, both times with her father when he was counseling travelers who sought spiritual guidance. Now she stood in the small lobby with its worn furniture and faded carpet, waiting for her life to change. Wyatt returned within 15 minutes, carrying a pillowcase stuffed with her belongings. "Your father tried to stop me at first," he said, handing her the makeshift bag. "But when I told him we were getting married, he just stood there like he had been struck by lightning. I do not think he believed me. He will soon enough." Sarah clutched the pillowcase to her chest. "The whole town will know by morning. Let them know. Let them all know that you found someone who believes in you." Wyatt glanced toward the stairs. "The judge is in room 7. We should go up." Judge Horace Fleming was a gray-haired man with kind eyes and hands gnarled by arthritis. He listened to Wyatt explain the situation, his expression growing sterner with each word about Marcus Dalton's scheme. "I am familiar with the type," he said when Wyatt finished. "Rich boys who think the world owes them whatever they want. Well, he will not get this young lady, that is certain." He turned to Sarah. "Miss Owens, you understand what you are agreeing to. Marriage is not something to be entered into lightly, even under these circumstances." "I understand, Your Honor." Sarah was surprised by how steady her voice was. "And I am grateful to Mr. Yates for offering me this opportunity." "Just Wyatt, please," her soon-to-be husband interjected. "We are going to be partners, not lord and servant." The judge smiled at that. "I think you two might just make this work. Now then, we will need 2 witnesses. Mr. Yates, if you would be so kind as to find them. I believe there are a few trustworthy souls in the dining room below." Wyatt returned with an older couple, the Hendersons, who ran a dry goods store on the edge of town. They looked at Sarah with pity rather than judgment, which was better than she had received from most. "We do not believe what they are saying about you," Mrs. Henderson said quietly, squeezing Sarah's hand. "That Dalton boy has always been trouble. You are doing the right thing, child." The ceremony was simple, almost austere. Judge Fleming read from a leather-bound book, his voice formal as he recited the vows that would bind her to Wyatt Yates for the rest of their lives. Sarah repeated the words when prompted, feeling as if she was outside her body watching someone else get married. Then it was Wyatt's turn, and something in his voice made her focus fully on the moment. He was not just reciting words. Each phrase was deliberate, weighted with meaning. When he said, "to honor and cherish," he was looking directly at her, those green eyes making a promise that went beyond the legal contract they were entering. "Do you have a ring?" the judge asked. Sarah opened her mouth to say it was not necessary, but Wyatt was already reaching into his vest pocket. He pulled out a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. "It was my mother's," he said quietly, taking Sarah's hand. "She died when I was 10, and I have been carrying it ever since, waiting for the right woman." He slid it onto her finger, and it fit as if it had been made for her. "Now it is yours." Sarah stared at the ring, this piece of someone else's history now woven into her own. "Wyatt, I cannot, you can, and you will. You are my wife now, Sarah. This is where it belongs." Judge Fleming cleared his throat. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Nevada, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Yates, you may kiss your bride." Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. She had not thought this far ahead, had not considered that the ceremony would include this tradition. Wyatt seemed to sense her panic because he leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away. His lips brushed against her forehead instead of her mouth, a gesture so gentle and respectful that tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, and he nodded, understanding without needing explanation. The paperwork took another 20 minutes. Sarah signed her name 3 times, each signature a step further from who she had been that morning. Sarah Owens was gone. In her place was Sarah Yates, wife of a rancher she had known for less than 2 hours. "Congratulations," Judge Fleming said, shaking both their hands, "and good luck. Something tells me you will need it." Wyatt paid the judge and thanked the Hendersons for their service as witnesses. Then he and Sarah were alone in the hotel hallway, the reality of what they had done settling over them like dust after a windstorm. "We should get some rest," Wyatt said. "I want to leave before sunrise, get ahead of any trouble Marcus Dalton might try to cause." "You think he will make trouble?" "I think he is a man who does not like losing. Better we are gone before he finds out you are married to someone else." Wyatt gestured down the hall. "I got us a room." 2 beds, he added quickly. "I meant what I said about giving you space." The room was small but clean, with 2 narrow beds separated by a washstand and a single window overlooking the street. Sarah set her pillowcase of belongings on the bed nearest the door and stood there awkwardly, unsure what to do next. "You can change if you want," Wyatt said, settling onto the other bed and pulling off his boots. "I will turn around, give you privacy. You are being very kind." Sarah was not sure what to make of this man who had upended her life to save it. "I am being decent," which should be the bare minimum but apparently is not these days. He did turn around, facing the wall, and Sarah quickly changed into her nightdress, grateful for the thin privacy. "You can look now," she said, climbing under the rough wool blanket. The bed was harder than her own at home, but she was so exhausted that it might as well have been a cloud. Wyatt turned back around, now in just his undershirt and pants. In the lamplight, Sarah could see scars on his arms, the marks of a life lived hard and outdoors. "Do you want to talk about what happened? With Dalton, I mean." "Not particularly." Sarah stared at the ceiling. "But I suppose you have the right to know, being my husband now." "You do not owe me anything. I am just offering an ear if you need it." The kindness in his voice was what broke her. Sarah found herself telling him everything. How Marcus Dalton had started pursuing her 6 months ago when he returned from business school back east. How his attention had been flattering at first, until she realized he did not see her as a person, but as something to be won. How she had refused his proposal 3 times, each refusal making him angrier. And then, 3 days ago, how he had started the rumor that they had been intimate, that she was carrying his child, and that her father should force her to accept his proposal to save the family's honor. "The worst part is that people believed him without question," Sarah said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I have lived in this town my whole life. I have been nothing but dutiful and proper and good. But one lie from a rich man, and suddenly I am a fallen woman, a whore, something to be ashamed of. People are afraid," Wyatt said quietly. "Marcus Dalton's father controls half the business in this town. Speaking against his son means risking their livelihoods. It is cowardice, but I understand it even as I despise it. My father is a preacher. He should have been the one person who stood up for me no matter the cost." The anger was giving way to grief now, but he did not. He questioned me, doubted me. He was more concerned with what the congregation thought than with the truth. "I am sorry." The words were simple but genuine. "You deserved better." Sarah turned on her side to look at him. "Why did you really help me? Please do not tell me it was just because you needed a wife. You could have found one without all this complication." Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. "My mother was shamed by her town too," he finally said. "Different circumstances, but the result was the same. People she had known her whole life turned on her because of gossip and lies. It broke something in her. By the time I was old enough to understand what had happened, she was already sick. I think the shame ate her up from the inside until there was nothing left." He met Sarah's eyes across the dim room. "When I heard what was happening to you, I saw my mother. And I thought, maybe this time the story can end differently. I am sorry about your mother." Sarah understood now that this was not just charity or convenience. This was personal for him in a way that made her marriage to him feel less like a business arrangement and more like something real. "Get some rest," Wyatt said, turning down the lamp until only a faint glow remained. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day." Sarah closed her eyes, but sleep was elusive. She listened to Wyatt's breathing slow and deepen, this stranger who was now her husband, and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning, she had been the shamed daughter of Reno's preacher. Tonight, she was the wife of a rancher heading to a new life in the mountains. It was too much, too fast, and yet somehow it felt like the first right thing that had happened in a long time. Someone pounded on the door, jolting Sarah from the edge of sleep. Wyatt was on his feet instantly, moving with the quick reflexes of someone used to trouble. "Who is it?" He called, positioning himself between Sarah and the door. "Marcus Dalton. I know Sarah Owens is in there. Open this door right now." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Wyatt looked at her, his expression calm but alert. "Do you want me to send him away?" he asked quietly. "No." Sarah stood up, wrapping her shawl around her nightdress. "Let him in. I want to face him. Are you sure? I am your wife now. He cannot touch me, and I want him to know that he did not win." Wyatt studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me anyway." He opened the door, his frame filling the doorway and blocking Dalton's view of the room. "Can I help you?" Marcus Dalton was handsome in the way of men who had never known hardship or denial. Blonde hair perfectly combed, expensive suit without a wrinkle, boots that had never seen real work. He tried to push past Wyatt but found himself blocked by an immovable wall of muscle. "Get out of my way. I am here for my fiancée." "Your fiancée?" Wyatt's voice was dangerously soft. "That is interesting, considering I just married Sarah Owens about 2 hours ago." "Which makes her my wife, not your fiancée." The color drained from Dalton's face. "That is impossible. You are lying." "Not lying. We have the certificate signed by Judge Fleming if you want to see it." Wyatt did not budge from the doorway. "Sarah is my wife now, which means you have no claim on her. I suggest you leave." "You cannot do this." Dalton's composure was cracking. Her father already agreed to our marriage. We had an arrangement. You had no such thing. Sarah stepped forward, letting Dalton see her. I never agreed to marry you, Marcus, not once. You lied about me to force my hand, but it did not work. I would rather marry a stranger than spend a single day as your wife. Dalton's face went from white to red. You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what I can do to you, to your father? I will destroy you both. You already tried to destroy me. Sarah felt a strange calm settling over her. You ruined my reputation, turned the town against me, made my own father doubt me. What more can you possibly do? I am leaving Reno in the morning. Your power ends at the town line. Your father will lose his church. My father will make sure of it. Then I guess he will learn what it costs to choose pride over his daughter. Sarah moved closer to Wyatt, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted Dalton to see them as a unit. You do not get to threaten me anymore. I am not yours, I never was. Dalton looked between them, his fury palpable. You will regret this, he snarled at Wyatt. Both of you. No one crosses the Dalton family and gets away with it. Is that a threat? Wyatt's voice dropped another octave, and Sarah felt the tension in him, coiled and ready. It is a promise. Dalton backed away from the door. You think you are safe up in the mountains. You think you can just leave and that will be the end of it. My father has reach throughout this territory. You will both pay for this humiliation. Get out. Wyatt took a step forward, and something in his movement made Dalton retreat further. Now, before I forget, I am trying to be civilized. Dalton left, his footsteps angry thuds on the wooden stairs. Wyatt closed the door and locked it, then dragged the washstand in front of it for good measure. I am sorry, Sarah said. I have brought trouble into your life. He is all talk. But Wyatt's expression was serious. Still, we will leave earlier than I planned. 3 in the morning instead of dawn. I want to be well away from here before he can gather his father or any of his friends. You think he will come after us? Men like Marcus Dalton do not handle rejection well. Better to be cautious. Wyatt returned to his bed. Try to get some sleep. I will stay alert. You cannot stay awake all night. Watch me. He sat with his back against the wall, his eyes on the door. Sleep, Sarah, I have got you. The simple assurance in those words was enough. Sarah lay back down, and despite everything, sleep finally claimed her. Her last conscious thought was that for the first time in 3 days, she felt safe. True to his word, Wyatt woke her at 3 in the morning. The town was silent, only the distant sound of the river and the occasional dog breaking the stillness. Sarah dressed quickly in her traveling clothes, a simple blue dress that had been her mother's. Wyatt helped her pack her few belongings into saddlebags, then led her quietly down the back stairs of the hotel. 2 horses waited in the alley, the paint from earlier and a pretty sorrel mare. I bought her this afternoon, Wyatt said, helping Sarah mount. Figured you would need your own horse where we are going. I have never owned a horse before. Sarah settled into the saddle, feeling the mare shift beneath her. The sensation was both thrilling and terrifying. You do now. Her name is Honey, or at least that is what the man I bought her from called her. You can rename her if you want. Wyatt swung onto his paint with practiced ease. Can you ride? Some. My father taught me when I was young. That will do. It is a long trip, but we will take it slow. Let you get used to being in the saddle again. He led them out of the alley and onto the main street, heading north toward where the mountains rose black against the star-filled sky. Sarah turned in her saddle to look back at Reno one last time. Somewhere in that sleeping town was her father, her childhood, everything she had ever known. And she was riding away from it all with a man she had known for less than a day. Having second thoughts, Wyatt asked quietly. No. Sarah was surprised by how true that was. I am just saying goodbye. Fair enough. Take your time. They rode in silence through the outskirts of town and into the desert beyond. The November night was cold, and Sarah was grateful for her mother's shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. The stars overhead were brilliant, undimmed by town lights, and the moon was waning but still bright enough to light their path. "How far is your ranch?" Sarah asked after they had been riding for about an hour. "About 40 miles as the crow flies, but we will need to take a longer route to avoid some rough terrain. 2 days of travel, maybe 3 depending on how you hold up. We will camp tonight at a place I know near a creek." "What is it like, the ranch?" Wyatt was quiet for a moment, and Sarah wondered if she had overstepped. But then he spoke, his voice warm with affection. "It is beautiful. A valley up in the hills, surrounded by pine forests. There is a creek running right through the property, good water year-round. I have been building a house there for the past 2 years. It is not finished yet, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it is solid. Good bones, my father would have said. Your father is gone too, died 6 years back. Fever took him quick. My mother followed a year later." He adjusted his hat against the cold wind. "I sold their place and came west, looking for somewhere to start fresh. Found that valley and knew it was home. It sounds wonderful." Sarah meant it. The idea of a house in the mountains, away from judgmental eyes and whispered gossip, sounded like paradise. "It is lonely, though. That is the truth of it. I have been living there alone for 2 years, and some days the silence is so thick you could cut it with a knife." He glanced at her. "That is why I came to Reno looking for a wife. I want to build something that matters, but it is hard to see the point when you are doing it all alone. And instead, you got me. A woman with a ruined reputation and no skills beyond what a preacher's daughter learns. You can read, of course. Write, do arithmetic. Yes, my father made sure I was educated. Then you have more skills than most out here, and your reputation is not ruined. It was lied about, which is different. Anyone who meets you from now on will only know what we tell them, and I will make sure they know you are a woman of honor who was wronged by a small man." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Sarah's throat tight. "You barely know me. How can you be so sure?" "Because I listened to what you said and how you said it. Because I watched you walk through that crowd with your head high even though they were tearing you apart. Because you refused to marry a man you did not love even when it would have been the easier choice." He met her eyes. "I know enough, Sarah. The rest we will learn together." They rode on as the sky slowly lightened from black to deep blue to the soft purple of pre-dawn. Sarah had never been this far from Reno, had rarely left the town limits at all. Everything around her was new and strange and achingly beautiful. The desert scrubland gradually gave way to rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and juniper. In the distance, the mountains rose higher and higher, their peaks already dusted with early snow. "We will stop here for breakfast," Wyatt said as the sun crested the horizon, turning the world golden. He led them off the trail to a cluster of rocks that provided some shelter from the wind. "There is a creek just beyond those boulders. We can water the horses and refill our canteens." Sarah dismounted, her legs wobbling slightly after hours in the saddle. Wyatt caught her elbow, steadying her until she found her balance. "Sorry, should have warned you that getting down is always harder than getting up." He began unpacking supplies from his saddlebags. "It gets easier after the first few days." How reassuring. But Sarah smiled as she said it, grateful when Wyatt smiled back. It was the first genuine smile she had seen on his face, and it transformed him from handsome to breathtaking. He built a small fire and made coffee in a battered tin pot while Sarah explored the creek. The water was cold and clear, tumbling over smooth stones. She knelt and splashed her face, gasping at the chill but feeling more awake than she had since this whole ordeal began. When she returned to the fire, Wyatt handed her a tin cup of coffee and a piece of hard bread with some dried meat. "Not fancy, but it will keep you going." They ate in companionable silence, watching the sun continue its climb. Sarah had so many questions, but she was not sure where to start. Finally, she settled on, "What do you need me to do, at the ranch, I mean? What will my role be?" Wyatt took a sip of his coffee, considering. "Whatever you are willing to do. I could use help with everything from cooking to mending to tending the garden. Eventually, when we get some chickens, someone will need to take care of them. And the house still needs finishing work, interior walls and such. But honestly, Sarah, I am not bringing you to the ranch to be my servant. You are my wife. That means we are partners. We will figure out the division of labor together based on what makes sense." "You keep saying things like that. About being partners, about us being equals. Is that really how you see this marriage? How else would I see it?" He looked genuinely confused. "You are a person, not property. You have thoughts and opinions and skills. Why would I not treat you as an equal? Because most men do not." Sarah thought of her father, who made all decisions for their household without input, of Marcus Dalton, who had seen her as something to possess. Most men expect their wives to obey without question. Then most men are fools. Wyatt poured himself more coffee. "My parents were partners in the truest sense. They made decisions together, supported each other, challenged each other when they disagreed. That is what I saw growing up, and that is what I want in my own marriage." He paused. "I know we are starting this backward, getting married before knowing each other. But I meant what I said in those vows, Sarah. I will honor you and cherish you, and that includes respecting you as a person." Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire or the coffee. "I will try to be a good wife to you. Just be yourself. That is all I ask." They finished breakfast and packed up, then continued north. The terrain grew hillier as they moved away from the desert and into the foothills. Pine trees began appearing, first in scattered clusters and then in proper forests. The air grew cooler and cleaner, smelling of sap and earth. Wyatt told her about the ranch as they rode, describing the house he was building, the plans he had for expanding the herd, the neighbors who were few and far between but generally friendly. Sarah listened, trying to picture this new life awaiting her. It was so different from everything she had known that it might as well have been on the moon. "There are some people I should warn you about," Wyatt said as they stopped to rest the horses around midday. "Not threats, just complicated situations." "What kind of complications?" "There is a Paiute camp about 10 miles from my ranch. We have been friendly since I arrived. I helped them when some white trappers tried to steal from them, and they have helped me in return, teaching me about the land and the weather patterns. But some folks around here do not like that I associate with them. I do not have a problem with it." Sarah had rarely encountered Indians in Reno, but her father had taught her that all people were God's children. "Are they peaceful?" "Very. They just want to live their lives and be left alone, same as anyone. The chief's name is Running Wolf. His daughter, Mourning Dove, is about your age. I think you two might get along if you give it a chance." "I would like that." The idea of having a friend, even one from a different culture, was appealing. Sarah had lost all her friends in Reno when the rumors started. They made camp that night in a meadow surrounded by tall pines. Wyatt showed Sarah how to hobble the horses so they could graze without wandering, how to build a proper fire, how to set up their bedrolls for maximum warmth. He was patient and thorough, never making her feel foolish for not knowing. "You are a good teacher," Sarah said as they ate dinner. Another simple meal of dried meat and hard bread supplemented by some wild onions Wyatt had found. "Had to learn everything by myself when my parents died. Makes you remember how hard it is when you are figuring things out alone. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. Tomorrow night we will be at the ranch. You will have a real bed and a real roof over your head. I am not complaining about sleeping under the stars. Sarah looked up at the vast expanse of sky, more stars visible than she had ever imagined existed. It is beautiful. It is that. Wyatt followed her gaze. Sometimes I come out here and just lie on the ground watching the sky for hours. Makes you feel small, but in a good way. Like your problems are not as big as they seem when there is all this universe around you. I could use some of that perspective right now. Sarah wrapped her blanket tighter around her shoulders. The temperature was dropping fast now that the sun was down. Come closer to the fire, Wyatt said, noticing her shiver. Or if you are not opposed, we could share blankets. Not anything improper, he added quickly. Just warmth. It is going to get cold tonight. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Wyatt arranged their bedrolls side by side, close enough to share heat but not touching. He lay down and opened his blanket in invitation. Sarah settled beside him and he covered them both. The warmth was immediate and welcome. Thank you, she whispered. Any time. His voice was soft, already drowsy. Sleep well, Sarah. Tomorrow you will see your new home. Sarah lay awake for a while, listening to Wyatt's breathing even out beside her. She was acutely aware of his presence, the solid warmth of him, the faint scent of leather and smoke, and something uniquely him. It was strange, being this close to a man who was not her father, but it did not feel wrong. It felt safe. For the first time since Marcus Dalton had started his rumors, Sarah felt something like hope. She woke to find Wyatt already up, brewing coffee and frying bacon in a pan over the rebuilt fire. The smell was heavenly, and her stomach growled in appreciation. "Morning," he said with a smile. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected." Sarah stretched, working out the kinks from sleeping on the ground. "I did not think I would be able to sleep at all. You were exhausted. Sometimes that is the best medicine." He handed her a plate with bacon and more of that hard bread, this time fried in the bacon grease until it was almost edible. "Eat up. We have a long day ahead, but by tonight you will be home." Home. The word felt foreign but not unwelcome. Sarah ate quickly, eager now to see this place Wyatt had described with such affection. They broke camp and rode on, climbing higher into the mountains. The pines grew thicker, the air thinner and colder. Sarah's mare, Honey, picked her way carefully over the rocky trail, and Sarah found herself trusting the horse more and more to know where to step. Around midday, they stopped at a small trading post, little more than a cabin with goods stacked haphazardly inside. The owner, a grizzled man named Pete, greeted Wyatt like an old friend. "Thought you were going to Reno for cattle business," Pete said, eyeing Sarah with undisguised curiosity. "Did that too. Also got married." Wyatt put a hand on Sarah's back, a gentle touch of support. "Pete, this is my wife, Sarah. Sarah, this is Pete, the closest thing we have to a neighbor." "Your wife?" Pete looked between them, then broke into a gap-toothed grin. "Well, I will be. Congratulations, both of you. Welcome to the territory, Mrs. Yates." "Thank you." Sarah found herself smiling at the genuine warmth in his greeting. "We need some supplies," Wyatt said. "Flour, sugar, coffee, whatever vegetables you have that are not completely withered." While Wyatt negotiated with Pete, Sarah explored the small store. There was not much, mostly necessities and tools, but tucked in a corner was a shelf of books. She picked one up reverently, a collection of poetry by Walt Whitman. "You like to read?" Pete asked, noticing her interest. "Very much. I have not had many books beyond the Bible." "Take it." "Wedding present." Pete waved away her protests. "I have read it a dozen times anyway. It should go to someone who will appreciate it." Sarah clutched the book to her chest, overwhelmed by the kindness. "Thank you. This means more than you know." They left the trading post with full saddlebags, and Sarah's new book carefully wrapped in oilcloth to protect it. The trail grew steeper, and Sarah focused on staying in the saddle as Honey climbed. Just when she thought they could not possibly go any higher, the trail crested a ridge and Wyatt stopped. "There," he said simply, pointing down into the valley below. Sarah looked and felt her breath catch. The valley was everything Wyatt had described and more. A patchwork of meadow and forest, with a creek cutting through the center like a silver ribbon. Toward the western edge stood a small cabin, sturdy and simple, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. Beyond it were a few outbuildings, a corral, and what looked like the beginnings of a barn. "It is beautiful," Sarah whispered. "It is home." Wyatt's voice held pride and relief in equal measure. "Come on, let's get you settled." The descent into the valley took another hour, but Sarah barely noticed, too busy drinking in every detail of her new surroundings. The cabin grew larger as they approached, and she could see that Wyatt had not exaggerated when he said it was unfinished. The structure was sound, but there were gaps where windows should be covered, and the porch railing was incomplete. Wyatt helped her dismount in front of the cabin. "It is not much yet," he said, suddenly sounding uncertain, "but it is solid, and it will keep you warm and dry." "It is wonderful." Sarah meant it. This rough cabin in the wilderness was more hers than the comfortable church house in Reno had ever been. Wyatt opened the door and gestured for her to enter first. The interior was dim, lit only by the fading afternoon light through the open doorway and a single window. There were indeed 3 rooms, a main living area with a stone fireplace, a small bedroom off to the left, and what looked like a storage room to the right. "The bedroom is yours," Wyatt said, bringing in her bags. "I have been sleeping out here by the fireplace. It is warmer anyway." Sarah explored her new room. It held a simple rope bed with a mattress stuffed with pine needles, a small chest for clothes, and a stand with a basin for washing. Someone, Wyatt presumably, had hung curtains at the window, simple cotton fabric that looked out of place among all the rough wood. "Did you make those?" she asked, touching the curtains. "Bought them in Reno last trip. Thought if I found a wife she would want some privacy." He stood in the doorway, not entering her space uninvited. "There is not much here yet, but we can build it up together, make it really feel like a home." "I am not helpless, you know." Sarah turned to face him. "I can sew, cook, keep house. My father may have been a preacher, but we were not wealthy. I know how to work." "I did not think you were helpless." Wyatt leaned against the doorframe. "But there is a difference between keeping a house in town and living out here. It is harder, lonelier. I want to make sure you understand what you have signed up for." "I understand that I am away from a town that hated me, and married to a man who has shown me more respect in 2 days than I received in 17 years in Reno. I understand that this is a second chance I never thought I would get. And I understand that I am going to work very hard to make sure you do not regret giving me that chance." Wyatt held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's get to work." They spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. Wyatt tended to the horses while Sarah unpacked what few belongings she had and explored the cabin more thoroughly. There was not much in the way of cookware or dishes, just the basics a single man needed. She made a mental list of things they would need as she went. For dinner, Sarah insisted on cooking. She made a simple stew from the supplies they had bought at Pete's store, letting it simmer over the fire while she attempted to bake bread in the Dutch oven. The results were edible if not exactly elegant. "This is the best meal I have had in months," Wyatt said, and he sounded sincere. "Turns out eating alone gets old fast. We will need to start a proper garden come spring," Sarah said, thinking ahead. And chickens, like you mentioned. Maybe a cow for milk. Already have a cow. She is pastured with the neighbor's herd for the winter. I will bring her back in spring along with some chickens. Wyatt mopped up the last of his stew with the bread. You are already thinking like a rancher's wife. I am a rancher's wife, Sarah smiled. Might as well embrace it. That night, Sarah lay in her small bed, listening to the sounds of the wilderness outside. Wind in the pines, the distant call of an owl, the creek babbling over stones. It was so different from the sounds of Reno, the voices and wagon wheels and church bells. Here, there was space to breathe, to think, to be. Through the thin wall, she could hear Wyatt moving around in the main room, banking the fire for the night. She wondered what he was thinking, if he regretted his impulsive decision to marry a stranger. But then she remembered the way he had looked at her when he said his vows, the way he had protected her from Marcus Dalton, the way he treated her like a person rather than property. Maybe, just maybe, this strange marriage could become something real. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Wyatt showed Sarah around the property, teaching her about the cattle that ranged in the valley, the best places to find wild game, the medicinal plants that grew near the creek. Sarah threw herself into making the cabin a home, sewing new curtains for the main room, organizing the supplies, experimenting with the limited ingredients available to make meals that were actually appealing. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their pasts. Wyatt told her about growing up in Missouri, about his father's small farm and his mother's gentle nature. Sarah talked about her mother, the woman she had never known but felt connected to through the few possessions she had left behind. "You miss your father?" Wyatt asked one afternoon as they worked together to patch a hole in the cabin's roof. Sarah considered the question carefully. "I miss who I thought he was. The father who taught me to read and ride, who told me Bible stories at bedtime. But that man did not defend me when I needed him most, which makes me wonder if he was ever really who I thought he was. People are complicated." Wyatt hammered a nail into a shingle. "They can be good and weak at the same time." "Is that an excuse?" "No, just an observation." He looked at her across the roof. "You have every right to be angry with him. I am furious. But I am also sad because he is the only family I had and now I have no one. You have me." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was not. "I know we barely know each other, Sarah, but we are family now, for better or worse." Sarah blinked back unexpected tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." A week after they arrived at the ranch, they had visitors. Sarah was hanging laundry on a line Wyatt had strung between two trees when she noticed 3 people approaching on horseback. Her first instinct was fear had Marcus Dalton tracked them down. But then she saw they were Indians, not white men. Wyatt. She called and he emerged from the barn, hand automatically moving to the rifle he kept nearby. But when he saw who was approaching, he relaxed and even smiled. "Running Wolf, you are early this year." The lead rider was an older man with long gray hair and a face lined by time and weather. He raised a hand in greeting. "The winter will be hard. We move to lower ground sooner." His eyes moved to Sarah with obvious curiosity. "You have a woman now." "I do. This is my wife, Sarah." Wyatt moved to stand beside her, a gesture of unity. "Sarah, this is Running Wolf, chief of the Paiute band I told you about, and his daughter, Mourning Dove, and his son, Gray Fox." Mourning Dove slid off her horse with fluid grace. She was indeed about Sarah's age, with long black hair and warm brown eyes. She approached Sarah without the wariness her father and brother displayed. "Your husband saved my brother's life last winter," Mourning Dove said in careful but clear English. "He is a good man. You are lucky." "I am beginning to realize that." Sarah found herself smiling at the other woman. "Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." The invitation seemed to break some invisible barrier. Running Wolf and Gray Fox dismounted, and the five of them settled around the fire pit Wyatt had built outside the cabin. Sarah brought out coffee and the biscuits she had made that morning, grateful she had made extra. "You teach her about the land?" Running Wolf asked Wyatt, accepting a cup of coffee. "I am trying. She learns fast. The winter here is not like the town winter. She will need to know how to survive if you are gone." Running Wolf turned to Sarah. "I will send Morning Dove to teach you women's knowledge. I would appreciate that very much." Sarah looked at Morning Dove, who nodded in agreement. They spent the afternoon in surprisingly easy company. Gray Fox and Wyatt discussed hunting, while Morning Dove taught Sarah the names of local plants and their uses. Running Wolf observed everything with sharp eyes that missed nothing. As they were preparing to leave, Running Wolf pulled Wyatt aside. Sarah could not hear what was said, but Wyatt's expression grew serious. When the Paiutes rode away, Sarah approached her husband. "What did he say?" He heard rumors in Reno. "Someone is looking for me, asking questions. A white man with money and anger." Wyatt's jaw tightened. "Marcus Dalton, most likely." Sarah felt ice settle in her stomach. How would Running Wolf know? His people trade in Reno sometimes. They hear things. Wyatt took her hands. "I do not want you to worry. Dalton is all bluster. Even if he found out where we are, he would not dare come up here. This is hard country for men who are not used to it. But you are worried. I am cautious. There is a difference." He squeezed her hands gently. "I will not let anything happen to you, Sarah. That is a promise." Despite his reassurances, Sarah noticed that Wyatt kept his rifle closer than usual over the next few days. He also taught her how to shoot, setting up targets near the cabin and showing her how to load, aim, and fire both the rifle and his revolver. "I do not like guns," Sarah said after missing the target for the 5th time. "You do not have to like them. You just have to be able to use them if necessary." Wyatt adjusted her stance, his hands on her shoulders positioning her correctly. "Out here, a gun can mean the difference between life and death. I need to know you can protect yourself if I am not here." Sarah tried again, and this time she hit the edge of the target. "Better, much better. Keep practicing." Morning Dove began visiting regularly, bringing her knowledge of the land and plants. She taught Sarah which roots were edible, which leaves could be made into tea for various ailments, how to preserve food for the winter. In return, Sarah taught Morning Dove more English and shared her book of poetry, reading aloud by the fire. "Your husband is good to let me visit," Morning Dove said one afternoon as they gathered pine nuts together. "Many white men would not allow their wives to associate with Indians." Wyatt is not like most men. Sarah had come to realize this more with each passing day. "And I value your friendship. You have taught me so much. You are different too. You listen instead of assuming you know better." Morning Dove smiled. "I think we will be good friends, Sarah Yates." "I think so too." As the days passed, Sarah and Wyatt settled into their life together. They worked side by side, building and improving the ranch. Wyatt finished the windows for the cabin, and Sarah sewed oilcloth curtains to keep out the cold. They repaired the corral, chopped wood for winter, hunted and preserved meat, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, their relationship began to shift. The formal politeness of those first days gave way to genuine friendship. They laughed together over shared jokes, debated everything from politics to philosophy during long evening conversations, found comfort in each other's company. Sarah caught herself watching Wyatt sometimes, admiring the way he moved, the strength in his hands, the kindness in his eyes. And sometimes she caught him watching her too, his expression unreadable but intense. One night, about 3 weeks after their arrival at the ranch, They sat by the fire after dinner. Sarah was reading aloud from her poetry book while Wyatt carved a piece of wood, working on what would eventually be a chair. "I celebrate myself and sing myself," Sarah read. "And what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." She looked up to find Wyatt had stopped carving and was watching her. "What? Nothing. I just like listening to you read. Your voice is soothing." He returned to his carving, but there was a slight flush on his cheeks. Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest. "Should I continue, please?" She read on, but now she was acutely aware of every sound Wyatt made, every shift of his position. The air between them felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. When she finished the poem, Sarah closed the book. "Wyatt, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you regret marrying me?" He looked up sharply. "What? No. Why would you think that? Because you married a stranger to save her from scandal. That is not what you came to Reno looking for." Wyatt set down his carving and moved closer, sitting on the floor beside her chair. "Sarah, I have not regretted marrying you for even a moment. Yes, we started this marriage under unusual circumstances, but these past weeks with you have been the happiest I have had since my parents died. You make this place feel like a home instead of just a house. You make me want to build something lasting instead of just surviving day to day." "Really?" Sarah's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Really?" He reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I know we agreed this would be a marriage of convenience, but Sarah, it has not felt like convenience for me. It has felt like something real." Sarah's heart was racing. "It has felt real to me too." "Yeah." Wyatt's hand lingered near her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Yeah." She leaned into his touch. "Wyatt, I think I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them for a heartbeat, and then Wyatt was moving, cupping her face in both hands and kissing her. Not the chaste kiss on the forehead from their wedding, but a real kiss, deep and searching and full of weeks of restrained wanting. Sarah kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. It was her first real kiss, and it was everything and nothing like she had imagined. Wyatt tasted like coffee and smoke and something uniquely him. His lips were surprisingly soft, his touch gentle despite the evident passion behind it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks." "Why did you wait?" Sarah asked, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "Because I meant what I said about giving you space and time. I did not want to rush you into anything you were not ready for." He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "But Sarah, I am in love with you too. I think I started falling that first day when you stood up to Marcus Dalton, and every day since, I have fallen a little more." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but these were tears of joy, not sorrow. "So what happens now? Now we build a life together. A real marriage, if that is what you want." His expression turned uncertain. "Is that what you want?" Instead of answering with words, Sarah kissed him again. This kiss was slower, deeper, an exploration and a promise all at once. When they parted, she whispered against his lips, "That is very much what I want." Wyatt stood, offering her his hand. "Then come with me." He led her to her bedroom, but this time he did not stop at the doorway. Sarah's heart was racing, but it was not fear that drove her pulse. It was anticipation, desire, love for this man who had saved her and then shown her what it meant to be truly seen. "Are you sure?" Wyatt asked, giving her one last chance to change her mind. "I have never been more sure of anything." Sarah reached up to kiss him again. "Make me your wife in truth, Wyatt Yates." And he did. Morning came soft and golden, spilling through the curtains to paint the room in honey light. Sarah woke in Wyatt's arms, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. She felt transformed, remade, as if the woman who had walked out of Reno was someone else entirely. Wyatt stirred, his arms tightening around her. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning." Sarah looked up at him, taking in the soft expression on his face, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at her. Any regrets? Not a single one. She stretched up to kiss him, morning breath and all. "You, only that I did not kiss you sooner." He tucked her hair back from her face. "I love you, Sarah Yates. I love you too." The words felt natural now, easy in a way they had not the night before. "Is this real? Sometimes I feel like I am going to wake up back in Reno and discover this was all a dream. If you do, come find me. I will marry you all over again." Wyatt's smile turned mischievous, though maybe with a bit more courting first. They lay there for a while longer, learning the feel of each other in the morning light, talking about everything and nothing. Eventually, practical concerns drove them from the warmth of the bed. The animals needed tending, breakfast needed making, life needed living, but everything felt different now. The work they had done side by side as partners now carried an undercurrent of intimacy. Touches lingered, glances held meaning, smiles were softer and more frequent. "We are never going to get anything done if you keep looking at me like that," Sarah said around midday as she caught Wyatt staring at her while she kneaded bread dough. "Like what? Like you want to carry me back to bed?" "That is because I do." He grinned unrepentantly. "But you are right. We have work to do." He forced himself to return to the saddle he was mending, though Sarah caught him looking at her several more times. That afternoon, Gray Fox arrived at the ranch, riding hard and fast. Wyatt was outside immediately, rifle in hand, but he lowered it when he saw who it was. "What is wrong?" Wyatt asked as Gray Fox dismounted. "The white man who was asking questions in Reno. He is coming. My father heard from traders that he hired men, rough men from the mining camps. They left Reno 2 days ago, heading toward your valley." Gray Fox's expression was grim. "My father says to prepare for trouble." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Marcus Dalton was really coming for them. Wyatt's jaw tightened. How many men? 4, including the rich man. Armed. Gray Fox glanced at Sarah. "My father offers our camp as refuge for your wife. She would be safe there." "No," Sarah stepped forward. "I am not running again. This is my home. I stay." "Sarah," Wyatt began, but she cut him off. "No, I left Reno because I had no choice and no one to stand with me. But now I have a home and a husband and friends. I am not leaving." She looked at Gray Fox. "Thank you for the offer, and please thank your father, but I stay here." Gray Fox looked at Wyatt, who sighed but nodded. "She is right. We stand together." "Then my brother and I will stand with you. My father is too old for fighting, but he can shelter the women if needed." Gray Fox's hand moved to the knife at his belt. "The white man has no right to threaten your peace." "No, he does not." Wyatt looked at Sarah. "All right, we prepare for a fight. Gray Fox, can you bring your brother and any men your father can spare? We will be here before sunset." Gray Fox remounted his horse. "Be ready." After he left, Wyatt turned to Sarah. "I know you want to stay, but you need to understand what this means. If Dalton and his men come here looking for a fight, people could get hurt. You could get hurt." "I know." "But Wyatt, if I run from him now, where does it end? He will always have power over me. I need to stand my ground." She took his hands. "We need to stand our ground. All right." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "But you stay in the cabin unless I tell you otherwise. And you keep that rifle loaded and ready." They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Wyatt moved the horses into the barn, secured anything that could be used as cover, made sure all the weapons were loaded and within easy reach. Sarah helped where she could, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. Gray Fox returned as promised, bringing his brother and 2 other young Paiute men. Running Wolf came as well, not to fight but to observe and counsel. "This white man must be very angry to come so far into the wilderness," Running Wolf said, accepting coffee from Sarah. "What did you do to him?" "I refused to be his possession." Sarah met the chief's eyes. "And then I married another man." Running Wolf nodded slowly. "He thinks he owns you." Men like that are dangerous because they do not understand that people are not things to be owned. He looked at Wyatt. "You will have to hurt him, maybe kill him, to make him understand he has lost." "I know." Wyatt's voice was heavy. "I do not want violence, but I will do what is necessary to protect my wife and my home." "That is the way of the world." Running Wolf turned to his sons. "But we help anyway. This man has shown respect to our people. We return that respect." They took shifts watching through the night, but Dalton and his men did not come. The waiting was almost worse than action would have been. Sarah tried to sleep, but kept jerking awake at every sound. When dawn came with no sign of trouble, Wyatt gathered everyone together. "They could be waiting, trying to make us nervous, or they could have gotten lost in the mountains. This is rough country for men who do not know it. Or they could have given up," Sarah said hopefully, though she did not really believe it. "Maybe." But Wyatt's expression said he did not believe it either. The answer came shortly after breakfast. Gray Fox, who had been scouting the trails, rode in fast. "They are coming. About an hour away, moving slow but steady." Wyatt turned to Sarah. "Inside the cabin, now." "Wyatt, now, Sarah, please." His eyes were pleading. "I need to know you are safe. I cannot focus on dealing with Dalton if I am worried about you." Sarah wanted to argue, but she saw the genuine fear in his eyes. "All right, but I am keeping the rifle, and if things go badly, I am coming out." "Fair enough." He kissed her quickly, desperately. "I love you. Remember that no matter what happens. Nothing is going to happen. You are going to send Dalton packing, and then we are going to get back to our life." She touched his face. "I love you too." Sarah retreated to the cabin, positioning herself by the window where she could see but was less exposed. The Paiute men and Wyatt spread out across the property, not hiding but not presenting easy targets either. True to Gray Fox's estimate, it was about an hour before 4 riders appeared at the edge of the valley. Even from a distance, Sarah could identify Marcus Dalton's proud posture, the expensive horse, the sense of entitlement that radiated from him. The 4 men approached slowly, stopping about 50 feet from the cabin. Dalton dismounted, as did his companions. They were rough-looking men, the kind hired to intimidate and hurt. Sarah felt her grip tighten on the rifle. "Wyatt Yates," Dalton called out, "I know you are here. Come out so we can discuss this like civilized men." Wyatt stepped out from behind the barn, his rifle held loosely but ready. "There is nothing to discuss, Dalton. Sarah is my wife. Legally and in every other way, you have no claim on her. That is where you are wrong." Dalton's voice was smooth, confident. "Sarah was promised to me. Her father gave his blessing before you interfered. That makes your marriage invalid. Sarah was never promised to you. She refused your proposal 3 times. You started a rumor about her to force her hand, and when that did not work, you tried to threaten her. Now you have come all this way to what? Force her to come back with you?" Wyatt shook his head. "That is not going to happen. You have no idea who you are dealing with." Dalton gestured to his hired men. "My father is one of the most powerful men in Nevada. You are nobody, a drifter with a half-finished ranch in the middle of nowhere. Do you really think you can stand against me? I am standing against you right now." Wyatt's voice was calm, almost conversational. "And I am not alone." As if on cue, the Paiute men stepped into view, forming a loose semicircle around Dalton and his men. The hired guns tensed, hands moving to their weapons. "Indians?" Dalton laughed, but it sounded forced. "You are hiding behind savages now." They are my friends, Wyatt said firmly, and they have more honor in their smallest fingers than you have in your entire body. Now I am going to give you one chance, Dalton. Ride away. Go back to Reno and forget about Sarah. She is not yours and never will be. I am not leaving without her. Dalton's facade of civility was cracking. She is mine. Do you understand? I chose her, and what I choose I take. Then you are going to be disappointed. Wyatt raised his rifle, not pointing it directly at Dalton but making his readiness clear. Last chance. Leave peacefully, or we will remove you by force. One of the hired men, a burly individual with a scar across his face, whispered something to Dalton. The mayor's son shook his head stubbornly, but the man persisted. Finally, Dalton waved him off and turned back to Wyatt. My man says we are outnumbered and outsmarted. He says I should cut my losses and go. Dalton's face was red with fury. But I want you to know this is not over. My family has reached throughout this territory. We will make your life difficult in ways you cannot imagine. Go ahead and try. Wyatt did not lower his rifle. But Sarah stays here. That is not negotiable. For a long moment, the two groups faced off, tension thick enough to choke on. Then Dalton remounted his horse with jerky, angry movements. You will regret this, he snarled. Both of you, I will make sure of it. You already tried to destroy Sarah's life once, Wyatt said. It did not work. What makes you think you will succeed now? Dalton did not answer, just wheeled his horse around and kicked it into a gallop. His hired men followed, casting wary glances at the Paiute warriors as they retreated. They watched until the four riders disappeared over the ridge. Only then did Wyatt lower his rifle, his shoulders sagging with relief. Sarah burst out of the cabin, running to him. He caught her, swinging her around, and she could feel him trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. It is over, he said into her hair. He is gone. Is it really over, though? Sarah pulled back to look at him. He said he would make trouble for us. Let him try. Wyatt looked at the Paiute men who were gathering near them. We have friends, we have each other, and we have right on our side. That is more than Marcus Dalton has ever had. Running Wolf approached, his weathered face thoughtful. He will not come back here, but he may cause trouble in town, make it difficult for you to sell cattle or buy supplies. Then we will find other buyers, other suppliers. Wyatt put his arm around Sarah. We will make this work, whatever it takes. Gray Fox grinned. You are stubborn, I like that. My father chose his friend well. They spent the rest of the day in celebration, a strange party made of relief and joy and the bonds of new friendship. Sarah cooked for everyone, stretching their supplies to feed the group. Morning Dove arrived in the afternoon, bringing her mother and some of the other women from their camp, and soon the ranch was filled with people and laughter. You have made a good place here, Morning Dove said to Sarah as they cleaned dishes together. And you have good people around you. That is what matters. I know. I just hope Dalton really does give up. I do not want to spend my life looking over my shoulder. Sarah scrubbed at a stubborn pot. I want peace. I want to build a life with Wyatt without constantly worrying about threats from my past. Then you will. You are strong, Sarah, stronger than you know. Morning Dove smiled. You left everything you knew to start over. Not everyone has that courage. I did not have much choice. You always have a choice. You could have married the man you did not love to keep the peace. Many women do. But you chose freedom instead, even when freedom meant uncertainty. That is strength. Sarah hugged her friend impulsively. Thank you for everything. For teaching me, for supporting us, for being here. We are sisters now. Morning Dove returned the hug. Sisters help each other. The Paiutes stayed through the evening, sharing stories and songs around the fire. Sarah sat beside Wyatt, his arm around her, and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Contentment. This was her family now. this strange collection of a cowboy husband, Paiute friends, and a half-built ranch in the mountains. As the guests began to depart, Running Wolf pulled Wyatt aside one more time. "You did well today. You stood your ground without unnecessary violence. That shows wisdom." He paused. "My people will be your people now. If you need help, you send word, we come." "Thank you." Wyatt clasped the chief's forearm in a gesture of respect. "That means more than I can say. You married a good woman. Make her happy." "I intend to spend the rest of my life doing exactly that." After everyone had left, Sarah and Wyatt stood on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The November air was cold, promising snow, but Sarah felt warm, wrapped in Wyatt's embrace. "You think he will really leave us alone?" Sarah asked quietly. "Honestly, I do not know. Men like Marcus Dalton do not like losing, but I also think his hired men made it clear that coming after us again would be more trouble than we are worth." Wyatt pressed a kiss to her temple. "Either way, we will face whatever comes together. Together." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "I like the sound of that. Me too." He kissed her properly this time, slow and deep, a kiss full of promise and love. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I know this is not how you imagined your life would turn out." "No, it is not. It is better." Sarah smiled at his surprised expression. "I thought I would marry some respectable man in Reno, live near my father, have a quiet, ordinary life. But this," she gestured to the valley around them, the cabin, the stars above. "This is extraordinary. You are extraordinary. And I would not trade this for anything. Not even for your reputation back. Especially not for that. My reputation was built on being who everyone else wanted me to be. Here, I can just be myself." Sarah Yates, rancher's wife, friend to the Paiute, woman who refused to let a small man make her small. She cupped his face in her hands. "I am more myself here than I ever was in Reno." Wyatt kissed her again, and then he swept her up into his arms, carrying her into the cabin amid her laughing protests. "Time to show you exactly how extraordinary I think you are," he said, kicking the door closed behind them. Winter settled over the valley like a gentle blanket, bringing snow and cold but also a deep peace. Sarah and Wyatt worked together to prepare the ranch for the season, insulating the cabin, storing food, making sure the animals were sheltered. And in the quiet evenings, they built their relationship, learning each other in ways both physical and emotional. Sarah discovered that Wyatt was ticklish behind his left knee, that he had nightmares sometimes about losing his parents, that he could do surprisingly good impressions of the various ranch animals. Wyatt learned that Sarah sang when she thought no one was listening, that she had a sharp wit that could make him laugh until he cried, that she was far stronger than her delicate appearance suggested. They fought sometimes, small disagreements about how to do things or larger debates about their plans for the ranch. But they always worked through it, learning that love was not just about the easy moments but about choosing each other even when things were hard. Morning Dove visited regularly despite the snow, bringing news and goods from her camp. She and Sarah had become true friends, sisters in all but blood. Through her, Sarah learned more about the Paiute people, their customs and beliefs, and found that she had more in common with them than she had ever had with the supposed civilized people of Reno. Christmas came, and Sarah felt a pang of sadness thinking of her father alone in the church. But Wyatt distracted her by presenting her with a gift he had been secretly working on for weeks. A rocking chair made from pine, perfectly sized for her, with her initials carved into the back. "When did you have time to make this?" Sarah asked, running her hands over the smooth wood. "Late at night when you were asleep, or early morning before you woke. It was not easy keeping it secret." Wyatt looked pleased with himself. Do you like it? I love it, and I love you. She kissed him thoroughly. Though now I feel bad because my gift is not nearly as impressive. Sarah's gift was a shirt she had sewn for him, made from fabric she had traded for with mourning dove. It was simple but well made, with careful stitching and buttons carved from bone. This is perfect, Wyatt said, immediately putting it on despite wearing another shirt already. Now I will think of you every time I wear it. You think of me anyway, Sarah grinned. True, but now I will think of you even more. They spent Christmas Day together, just the two of them, cooking a special dinner and exchanging stories of past holidays. It was simple and intimate and perfect. In January, a letter arrived via Pete from the trading post. It was from Sarah's father, forwarded through Judge Fleming, who had apparently kept track of their whereabouts. Sarah stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. You want me to read it first? Wyatt offered, seeing her distress. No, I need to do this. Sarah broke the seal and unfolded the letter, her father's familiar handwriting blurring as tears filled her eyes. The letter was short but profound. Thomas Owens apologized for failing his daughter, for allowing fear and social pressure to override his duty as a father. He explained that the congregation had turned on him after Sarah left, many members angry that he had allowed such a scandal to happen. He had lost his position as preacher and was working now as a clerk to support himself. But more importantly, he had learned that Marcus Dalton had been lying. Several young women had come forward after Sarah left, admitting that Dalton had made similar advances toward them and threatened them into silence. The truth had come out, and Dalton had left Reno in disgrace, his father's influence unable to save him from the anger of the community. Your name is cleared, her father wrote. Everyone knows now that you were innocent, that you were wronged. I know this comes too late, that I should have believed you from the start. I failed you as a father, and I am deeply sorry. I do not expect forgiveness, but I hope you are happy wherever you are. You deserved better than what I gave you. All my love, Father. Sarah read the letter aloud to Wyatt, her voice breaking several times. When she finished, she sat in silence for a long moment. How do you feel? Wyatt asked gently. I do not know. Vindicated, I suppose. It is good to know the truth came out, but also angry because it is too late. The truth should have mattered when I needed it to matter. She looked at the letter, and sad because he lost everything too. You want to write back? Sarah thought about it. Eventually, maybe, but not yet. I'm not ready to forgive him, and I will not pretend I am just to make him feel better. She folded the letter carefully. Is that terrible of me? No, it is honest. Wyatt pulled her close. You can forgive him when and if you are ready. There is no timeline on these things. Have I told you lately that you are wonderful? Not in the last hour, at least. Sarah laughed despite her tears. Well, you are. Thank you for letting me feel what I feel without trying to fix it. That is what partners do. As winter gave way to spring, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The realization came slowly amidst monthly course, morning nausea, a tenderness in her breasts. When she was certain, she told Wyatt one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set. I am going to have a baby, she said simply. Wyatt went very still. Are you sure? As sure as I can be without a doctor, which is about as close to certain as we are going to get out here. Sarah watched his face, trying to read his reaction. Are you happy? Happy. Wyatt turned to her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Sarah, I am thrilled. Terrified but thrilled. We are going to be parents. We are, Sarah laughed, the reality of it settling over her. We are actually going to have a baby. Wyatt kissed her, his hands gentle on her still flat stomach. We need to get you to a doctor. Make sure everything is all right. Mourning Dove's mother is a midwife. I trust her more than any doctor in Reno. Sarah covered his hands with her own. Besides, women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine. You will be more than fine. You will be amazing. Wyatt's voice was thick with emotion. A baby, our baby, I cannot believe it. Over the following months, Sarah's body changed and expanded, and Wyatt treated her like she was made of spun glass. Sarah found it both endearing and annoying. "I am pregnant, not dying," she said in exasperation one day when he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that she was perfectly capable of carrying herself. Women work throughout pregnancy, but they do not have to, not when they have husbands to help. Wyatt refused to relinquish the basket. "Let me do this, Sarah. Let me take care of you. You take care of me every day." But Sarah relented, recognizing that this was Wyatt's way of dealing with his own fears about childbirth and parenthood. Mourning Dove visited frequently, bringing herbs and advice from her mother. She taught Sarah exercises to prepare her body for birth, remedies for the various discomforts of pregnancy, songs to sing to calm both mother and child. "You will be a good mother," Mourning Dove said one afternoon as they sat in the sunshine, Sarah's hand on her swelling belly. "The baby is lucky to have you." "I hope so. I am terrified I will do everything wrong." Sarah watched a bird land on a nearby fence post. "My own mother died giving birth to me. What if you are not your mother? Every birth is different." Mourning Dove squeezed her hand. "And you have people who love you, who will help. My mother, me, your husband who looks at you like you hung the moon. You will not be alone." Sarah held onto those words during the difficult days of late pregnancy, when her back ached and her feet swelled, and simple tasks became exhausting. Wyatt was endlessly patient, rubbing her feet and back, helping her in and out of the rocking chair he had made, talking to her belly at night and telling their unborn child stories. "Do you want a boy or a girl?" Sarah asked one night in bed, Wyatt's hand spread across her stomach. "Healthy." "That is all I want." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Though if I am being honest, I hope the baby has your eyes and your kindness and your strength." "And your stubbornness," Sarah teased. "Only if necessary," he grinned. "But seriously, Sarah, I do not care if we have a son or a daughter. I just want both of you to be safe and well." "We will be." Sarah said it with more confidence than she felt, but she was determined to believe it. Too many women she knew had died in childbirth. But she was young and healthy, and she had good care. She would survive this. She had to. The baby came in early November, almost exactly 1 year after Sarah and Wyatt had married. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Mourning Dove and her mother attended Sarah, with Wyatt pacing anxiously outside the cabin, periodically asking if everything was all right. "Your husband is wearing a path in the dirt," Mourning Dove said during one of the brief respites between contractions. "He is more worried than you are." "He loves me." Sarah managed a weak smile. "That makes him worry." "That is what love does." Mourning Dove's mother, a woman named Soaring Bird, placed a cool cloth on Sarah's forehead. "But you are doing well. The baby will come soon." Soon turned out to be another 4 hours of grueling work. Sarah had never experienced pain like this, waves of it that built and crested and left her breathless. But finally, she felt the baby move through her, and then the sudden release and relief as a lusty cry filled the cabin. "A son," Soaring Bird announced, wrapping the squalling infant in soft cloths. "A strong, healthy son." Sarah reached for her baby with trembling hands, and when they placed him in her arms, she felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. He was red and wrinkled and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be green like his father's. "Can I come in?" Wyatt's voice came from outside, almost comically tentative. "Yes," Sarah called, unable to take her eyes off her son. Come meet your boy." Wyatt burst through the door, his eyes immediately finding Sarah and the baby. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside the bed. "Sarah, oh Sarah, you are all right." His hands hovered over them both as if afraid to touch something so precious. "I am tired and sore, but yes, I am all right, and so is he." She tilted the baby so Wyatt could see better. "Say hello to your son, my son." Wyatt's voice broke. He reached out with one finger to stroke the baby's cheek. "He is so small. He is perfect." Sarah looked between her husband and her son, feeling complete in a way she had never experienced. "We need to name him." They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at her son's face, Sarah knew exactly what his name should be. "Thomas," she said quietly, "after my father. Because even though he failed me, he also gave me life and taught me to be strong, and because I think I am ready to forgive him now." Wyatt looked at her with such love it made her breath catch. "Thomas Yates. It is a good, strong name." Mourning Dove and her mother stayed for a few more hours, making sure Sarah and the baby were settled. They taught Wyatt how to hold Thomas, how to swaddle him, how to help Sarah when she needed to nurse. He was an attentive student, determined to be the best father possible. "Thank you," Sarah said to the 2 Paiute women as they prepared to leave. "I could not have done this without you." "Yes, you could have," Soaring Bird said with a smile, "but you did not have to. That is what community is for." After they left, Sarah and Wyatt spent the evening learning how to be parents. Thomas was a good baby, nursing well and sleeping in short bursts. Between his demands, Sarah and Wyatt stared at him in wonder, marveling that they had created this tiny person. "I wrote to my father," Sarah said as Wyatt held Thomas against his shoulder, gently patting his back. "Last week, before the baby came, I told him I was pregnant and that I was ready to start rebuilding our relationship if he was willing." "That is good." Wyatt looked up from their son. "I know that was not an easy decision. It was not, and I am not sure what will come of it, but I realized something while I was in labor." Sarah shifted in the bed, wincing at the soreness. "I realized that holding on to anger was poisoning me from the inside." Mourning Dove's mother said something once about how resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. "My father hurt me, yes, but I am the only one suffering by refusing to forgive him." "Does this mean you want him to visit? Maybe someday." "Not yet. But I can start writing to him. Let him know about his grandson." Sarah held out her arms, and Wyatt carefully transferred Thomas to her. "I want Thomas to grow up knowing love from all directions, not surrounded by walls I built out of old pain. You are an amazing woman, Sarah Yates." Wyatt kissed her forehead. "Have I mentioned that lately?" "Not in the last few hours." Sarah smiled down at her sleeping son. "But I will never get tired of hearing it. That winter was the hardest and best of Sarah's life." Thomas demanded constant attention, waking every few hours to nurse, needing to be changed and soothed and carried. Sarah was exhausted in ways she had never imagined, but she was also happier than she had ever been. Wyatt was a devoted father, taking Thomas whenever Sarah needed rest, walking the floor with him during fussy periods, changing diapers without complaint. He sang to their son, told him stories, promised him adventures when he was older. "You are a natural at this," Sarah said one night, watching Wyatt rock Thomas to sleep. "I had good examples." Wyatt's voice was soft, careful not to wake the baby. "My parents showed me what love looks like. I am just trying to pass that on. You are doing more than that. You are building something entirely new." Sarah moved closer, wrapping her arms around both her husband and son. "A family built on choice and love instead of obligation. That is rarer than you think." Letters from Thomas Owens arrived regularly now, full of apologies and gradual healing. He had moved to a smaller town, found work teaching children to read, and was slowly rebuilding his life. He asked questions about his grandson, sent what money he could spare, and expressed hope that someday Sarah might allow him to visit. "I think I am ready," Sarah said in the spring when Thomas was 6 months old and babbling happily. "I think I can see my father again." Wyatt looked up from where he was repairing a harness. "Are you sure?" "No, but I do not think I will ever be completely sure. Some things you just have to do afraid." She bounced Thomas on her hip, making him giggle. "Besides, he is Thomas's grandfather. He should meet his namesake." They sent a letter inviting Thomas Owens to visit that summer, and in July he arrived at the ranch. Sarah's first glimpse of her father in over a year and a half took her breath away. He had aged dramatically, his hair completely gray now, his frame thinner, his face lined with sorrow and regret. But when he saw Sarah standing on the porch with Thomas in her arms, his entire face transformed. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he dismounted, his movements slow and uncertain. "Sarah," he said, his voice breaking, "my girl, I am so sorry." Sarah stood frozen for a moment, then felt Wyatt's hand at her back, supporting her. She took a breath and stepped forward. "Father." "Thank you for coming." Thomas Owens approached slowly, stopping a few feet away, his eyes moving between Sarah and the baby. "Is this Thomas?" "It is." Sarah turned so her father could see better. "Your grandson, Thomas Wyatt Yates. May I hold him?" The request was tentative, as if he expected to be refused. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. She placed Thomas in her father's arms, watching as the older man's face crumpled with emotion. He held his grandson like something infinitely precious and impossibly fragile. "He is beautiful," Thomas Owens whispered. "Perfect, just like his mother was as a baby." "Come inside," Wyatt said, breaking the charged moment with practical kindness. "We have coffee and food. You must be tired from traveling." The visit was awkward at first, everyone dancing around the pain of the past. But slowly, as the days went by, Sarah and her father found their way toward each other again. It was not the relationship they had before that was gone, shattered beyond repair. But they built something new, based on honesty and forgiveness and the shared love of little Thomas. "I do not expect you to forget what I did," Thomas Owens said on the last evening of his visit. They sat on the porch while Wyatt put Thomas to bed inside. "Or even to fully forgive. But I want you to know that I regret my cowardice every single day. You are my daughter. I should have protected you, believed you, stood up for you, and I did not. That is a failure I will carry for the rest of my life." "I know, Father." Sarah looked out at the valley, now lush with summer growth. "And you are right that I cannot forget, but I can forgive. I have forgiven you, actually. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free of the anger. That is more grace than I have any right to expect." Thomas reached over to take Sarah's hand. "You have built a good life here. A happy life, that brings me more peace than you can know. I have been lucky. Wyatt is a good man. He loves you. That is clear in every look he gives you, every time he speaks about you." Her father smiled. "I am grateful to him for seeing your worth when I could not. So am I." Thomas Owens left the next morning, but the visit had healed something in Sarah she had not realized was still broken. She still loved her father, she realized. She had been angry with him, hurt by him, but love had remained underneath all of that, waiting to be uncovered. "How do you feel?" Wyatt asked as they watched her father ride away down the valley. "Lighter," Sarah said after a moment, "like I have been carrying something heavy and finally got to set it down." "Good." Wyatt kissed her temple. "You deserve to feel light." The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and growth. Sarah and Wyatt expanded the ranch, adding more cattle, finishing the barn, building additional rooms onto the cabin as their family grew. 2 years after Thomas was born, they welcomed a daughter, Emma. 3 years after that came another son, William. The cabin became a home, filled with the chaos and joy of children. Thomas grew into a curious, adventurous boy who loved exploring the mountains with his father. Emma was quieter but sharp as a tack, always watching and learning. William was still a baby, all giggles and grabbing hands. Mourning Dove remained a constant presence in their lives, as did her family. Sarah's children grew up speaking both English and Paiute, learning the ways of two cultures. It was a rich, full life, far removed from the shame and judgment that had driven Sarah from Reno. Pete from the trading post became a regular visitor, often bringing news and supplies. Through him, Sarah learned that Marcus Dalton had never recovered from his disgrace. He had tried to establish himself in other towns, but the rumors followed him. Last Pete had heard, Dalton had left Nevada entirely, heading back east to try to rebuild his life away from his father's shadow. You ever think about what your life would have been like if you had married him? Emma asked one day when she was 7. She had been listening to Sarah and Mourning Dove talking about the old days. Sometimes, Sarah admitted, but never with longing, only with relief that I did not. Why did he want to marry you if he did not love you? Because he thought of me as a possession, not a person. He wanted to own me, not love me. Sarah pulled her daughter close. That is why you must always remember that you belong to yourself first. No matter who you marry or how much you love them, you are your own person with your own value. Like you and Papa. Exactly like me and Papa. We belong to each other, but we also belong to ourselves. Emma nodded seriously, storing this information away with all the other lessons Sarah tried to teach her about being a strong woman in a world that often tried to make women small. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wyatt surprised Sarah with a trip, just the two of them. Mourning Dove and her mother agreed to watch the children for a few days, and Wyatt took Sarah deep into the mountains to a hidden valley he had discovered years ago. This place is incredible, Sarah said, looking around at the meadow filled with wildflowers, the clear lake reflecting the surrounding peaks. How did you find it? I was tracking a lost calf a few years back, stumbled on this place and knew I had to bring you here someday. Wyatt helped her dismount, then pulled supplies from the saddlebags to set up camp. I wanted to spend some time with just you. I love our children more than life, but sometimes I miss having you all to myself. I miss it too. Sarah moved into his arms. At 27, she was no longer the frightened girl who had fled Reno. She was a woman, a mother, a rancher's wife, confident in herself and her place in the world. Thank you for this, for all of it, for the life we have built together. Thank you for saying yes to a crazy proposal from a stranger. Wyatt kissed her. I cannot imagine my life without you in it. They spent 2 days in the hidden valley, swimming in the cold lake, making love under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. It was a gift, this time together, a reminder that beneath the roles of mother and father they were still Sarah and Wyatt, still the people who had fallen in love in the midst of crisis and scandal. On the ride back to the ranch, Sarah said, I have been thinking, we should write our story down. Not for publication or anything grand like that, but for the children, so they know where they came from. The story of how the preacher's daughter was shamed by the town and the cowboy married her before sunrise. Wyatt's tone was teasing but affectionate. Exactly that story. Because it is not just about shame and scandal. It is about choosing love over fear, about building something real from impossible beginnings. It is about how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing in your life. Sarah reached over to take his hand. I want them to know that even when the world seems dark, there is hope. There is always hope. Then we will write it together, our story for our children and anyone else who needs to hear it. Wyatt brought her hand to his lips. "I love you, Sarah Yates. Have I mentioned that lately?" "Not in the last hour," Sarah smiled, "but I will never get tired of hearing it." They returned to the ranch to find their children healthy and happy, full of stories about their adventures with Mourning Dove. Thomas had learned to fish, Emma had started a small garden, and William had taken his first real steps. "I missed you," Thomas said, hugging Sarah tight, "but we had fun." "I missed you too, sweetheart, but sometimes parents need time together, just like children need time with friends." Sarah kissed the top of his head. "Did you take care of your brother and sister?" "I did. Papa would be proud." "I am proud," Wyatt said, ruffling his son's hair. "You are growing up into a fine young man." Life continued its steady rhythm through the years. Sarah maintained her correspondence with her father, who visited annually and delighted in watching his grandchildren grow. The rift between them never fully healed, but it scarred over in a way that allowed both of them to move forward. The ranch prospered. Wyatt's hard work and honest dealings earned respect throughout the territory, and soon other ranchers sought his advice. Sarah became known as well, particularly among women who needed help or counsel. She had a way of listening without judgment, of offering practical support, that drew people to her. Mourning Dove married and had children of her own, and the two families remained closely linked. The children grew up together, learning from both cultures, building bridges between two worlds. When Thomas was 15, he came to Sarah with questions about Reno and Marcus Dalton. He had heard bits and pieces over the years, but now he wanted the full story. Sarah told him everything, holding nothing back. She explained about the false accusations, the town's judgment, the fear and shame she had felt. She told him about Wyatt's incredible offer, about marrying a stranger in a hotel room, about fleeing Reno before sunrise. She told him about Marcus Dalton's pursuit and eventual defeat. "Why did you name me after grandfather if he did not defend you?" Thomas asked when she finished. "Because people are complicated. Your grandfather made a terrible mistake, but he also gave me life and raised me the best he could. Naming you after him was my way of saying that people can fail and still be worthy of love, that forgiveness is possible even when the hurt runs deep." Sarah took her son's hand. "You are named for the man he became after his mistake, not the man who made it. I am proud to carry his name then." Thomas looked at his mother with something like awe. "You are the strongest person I know, Mama." "I am only strong because I had people who stood beside me when I was weak. Your father, Mourning Dove and her family, even strangers like Pete who showed me kindness when I needed it most." She pulled him into a hug. "Remember that, Thomas. Strength is not about doing everything alone. It is about having the courage to accept help when you need it." Years later, when Sarah was 42 and Wyatt 47, they took a trip back to Reno. They had not been back since that November night 25 years earlier, and Sarah felt anxiety knotting her stomach as they rode into town. Reno had grown. The dusty frontier town of her youth had become a proper small city, with paved streets and brick buildings and even a railroad line. The church where her father had preached was still there, though with a different minister now. The oak tree where the crowd had gathered to judge her had been cut down. "You want to stop anywhere?" Wyatt asked, watching Sarah take in the changes. "No, I just wanted to see it one more time. To remind myself that it does not have power over me anymore." Sarah turned her horse to face north toward home. "I was so small when I lived here, so concerned with what people thought. I had to lose everything to figure out who I really was. You are not small anymore." "No, I am not." Sarah smiled at her husband, this man who had saved her and loved her and built a life with her. "Let's go home, Wyatt, our real home." They rode back to the ranch through the familiar mountains, and as they crested the ridge that overlooked their valley, Sarah felt the same sense of rightness she had experienced the first time Wyatt brought her here. This was where she belonged, in this wild place with this good man, surrounded by the family they had built together. The children were grown now, or nearly so. Thomas was courting a girl from a nearby ranch. Emma had decided she wanted to be a teacher like her grandfather. William, at 13, was already showing signs of having his father's gift with horses. Sarah and Wyatt had built something lasting, something that would outlive them. They had turned scandal into strength, shame into triumph. They had shown their children that love was a choice, made again and again in small moments and large crises. On their 30th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch. Thomas was married now with a baby daughter of his own. Emma had indeed become a teacher, working in a small school they had helped establish in the valley. William was training horses and making a name for himself throughout the territory. "Tell us the story again," Thomas's wife asked as they sat around the fire that evening. "About how you and Wyatt met." Sarah looked at Wyatt, and he nodded. Together, they told the story they had told countless times over the years. The story of a preacher's daughter shamed by her town and a cowboy who married her before sunrise. They told it honestly, holding nothing back, emphasizing the fear and uncertainty, but also the hope and love that had emerged from impossible circumstances. "I did not know that night that I was making the best decision of my life," Sarah said, reaching for Wyatt's hand. "I was just desperate to escape, but Wyatt saw something in me worth saving, worth loving, and he gave me the space and time to become who I was meant to be." "You did the same for me," Wyatt added. "I was just existing before you came into my life. You taught me what it means to really live, to build something that matters." "What would you tell your younger selves?" Emma asked. "If you could go back to that night in Reno?" Sarah and Wyatt exchanged a long look. "I would tell my younger self that it gets better," Sarah said finally. "That the darkness is not forever. That shame and scandal and judgment are not the end of the story, just the beginning of a new chapter." "I would tell myself to trust my instincts," Wyatt said. "I knew the moment I saw Sarah that she was special, that she deserved better than what Reno was giving her. Following that instinct, offering her marriage, was the best thing I ever did. I would tell my younger self to be brave more often, to trust that doing the right thing will work out." "And what would you tell us?" William asked, looking around at his siblings. "What is the lesson we are supposed to learn from your story?" "That you are not defined by what others think of you," Sarah said immediately. "That your worth is inherent, not dependent on reputation or position or approval. That when the world tries to make you small, you have the right to choose to be big instead. And that love is not about perfect circumstances," Wyatt added. "It is about choosing each other every day through hard times and good. Your mother and I started with nothing but a legal bond and hope. Everything else we built together, one day at a time." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night sky. Around it, 3 generations of the family Wyatt and Sarah had built sat in companionable silence, absorbing the story and the lessons. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, Sarah and Wyatt sat alone on the porch of the cabin he had built with his own hands. The valley spread before them in the moonlight, peaceful and perfect. "You have any regrets?" Sarah asked, leaning against Wyatt's shoulder. "Not a single one. You, only that I did not meet you sooner. We could have had even more time together." Sarah turned to kiss him. "But then, maybe we needed to be exactly who we were at exactly that moment for everything to work out the way it did. I believe that. I believe we found each other when we were supposed to, when we were ready." Wyatt wrapped his arm around her. "I love you, Sarah. I have loved you for 30 years, and I will love you for however many more years we are given. I love you too, my husband, my partner, my home." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling utterly content. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger with a crazy proposal. Wyatt's voice was warm with affection and memory. You made me the luckiest man alive. They sat together in the cool November air, the same month they had married 3 decades earlier, and watched their valley sleep. They had built this life together from nothing, from scandal and shame and desperate hope. They had faced down threats and hardships, raised children, built a thriving ranch, created a legacy of love that would outlast them both. Sarah thought of that girl in Reno, standing in the doorway of her father's church, watching a rope swing in the November wind. She thought of how that girl had felt like her life was over, like there was no hope, no future, no escape from the shame that had been unjustly placed on her. If she could speak to that girl now, she would tell her that sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually a doorway. That sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. That sometimes a stranger's kindness can change your entire world. She would tell her that 30 years later, she would sit on a porch with that stranger, who was no longer a stranger but the love of her life, and feel nothing but gratitude for every moment that led her to this place. Sarah Yates, once Sarah Owens, once the shamed preacher's daughter, now a respected rancher's wife, mother, grandmother, and friend, smiled in the darkness. Her life had not been easy, but it had been good, so good. And it had all started with a cowboy who married her before sunrise and loved her ever after.